Hey there, this is Gil. I'm going to do another tutorial on how to integrate your test program and your main program into um, the same file so you can quickly switch back and forth and have a section that is able to test motors and sensors at the same time that you have your fully functioning program that's going to be solving the real-world application for your robot. So to do this, we have to learn about functions, which is an important part of any programming language. And in RobotC, functions are pretty easy to define. You just have to learn the basic syntax. So again, the best way to learn is to go to the help file and to type in the topic that you want to learn about. So we're going to learn about functions here, and what you'll see is a lot of good information about how RobotC needs to be set up in order for functions to work. So I'm going to go over this in detail, but you can see as an example they have 3 functions and how those functions are called. So if you want to reference that in the help, feel free to review that, but we're going to give you an example right here. So the first thing that needs to happen in most programming languages is you have to declare your function. And declaring your function is really telling RobotC or the compiler that it is going to expect a function definition later. So I'm going to declare 2 functions really quick. One is called test loop, which is going to contain our test code, and the other one is going to be called main loop. You'll notice that at the beginning of this function declaration, I used a statement or a parameter called void. So all functions have the ability to return a parameter, and that parameter can be whatever you want. If I want to return an integer, I would type int. If I want to return a boolean, I would type bool. And there's a special word called void, which tells the compiler that you're not going to return anything. Pretty weird, but that's a common term that's used in a lot of programming languages, so you'll get used to it pretty quickly. So again, we got 2 functions, a test loop and a main loop, and now let's figure out how to set up and run those. So the good thing about the main loop is it's really going to be everything that I've defined inside of the task main. And so in RobotC there's functions and tasks, and right now we're not going to talk about tasks, so they look similar, but the prefix task will tell you if it's a task. So we're going to change the main task into a function. And the way that we do that is we change the word task to void, and we match the declaration that we did up top. So instead of calling this main, I'm going to call it main loop. And you now see I've changed the task into a function, and then we're going to add a function called test loop. So if I just come in here and say test loop, there's not going to be any parameters passed into it. Remember, there's no semicolons after a function definition, so I'm for now going to just leave test loop without anything inside it. Or, well, why don't I stick some test code inside it. So what about just putting a placeholder here with some write debug line strings or statements. So what you see here is I'm going to tell the debugger that I've entered the test loop. I'm going to wait the wait 10 msecs, so 100 10 msecs is 100 times 10, that's 1000, so that's 1000 milliseconds or 1 second, and then I'm going to exit this loop. So you guys can build out whatever you want to do in the test loop. This is just a placeholder so we can prove that we execute that code. So I have pretty much my two functions now, but since I got rid of my task, the main task, which has to be in every program, right? I have to put that back in. So you see here's the main task that I rewrote, and I'm gonna make this pretty simple. So I'm going to do two things in this. Well, first is call the main loop, and the second is to call the test loop. There's a lot of fancy ways that you can call these using variables or using other features. I'm not going to complicate this tutorial with that, but the first thing I wanted to do is call the main loop and prove that the code works. So I'm going to comment out the running of the test loop. And the nice thing about it is when you use functions, I don't have to comment out the whole function, which is sometimes a pain. I only have to comment out the call to it, and then that test loop will not be called. So let's see if this works. Compile and download. There's my robot. Let's reset it. Let's bring up the debug window. And see how this works. So I would expect this to run just like the previous code that we ran in the other tutorial. And let's prove that it does the same thing. Again, the robot isn't always going on the same path just because of the way the code is running, but you can tell by looking at the debug stream that it's pretty much the same code executing, and that the code is coming from your main loop. So I'm going to stop that, or it looks like it stopped for me. And let's clear the contents. And now let's say that you're having problems with your robot and you want to be able to run the test loop really quickly, and you've you've written out the test loop, but for now we're just going to show that we're going to be able to exit. So to do that, you come in here and you comment out the main loop. You uncomment the test loop. Remember to recompile and re-download, or it's going to run the old code and not run the new code. And we're going to reset. And rerun it. And you see we really just entered the test loop here. We didn't move at all because I hadn't done anything in the test loop. And it took us 2 milliseconds just to even say we were in the test loop, right? And then 1 second later, or 1,000 milliseconds later, we exit that loop, which is what we expected. The other thing that I didn't do, but is probably a good idea, is to clear. We cleared it in the main loop, but if we don't clear it up here, so that means that the test loop will run and there's no clear statement. So instead of writing clear in each of the loops, we can just write it once at the beginning, and that will clear the debug stream. That's all. Good luck, guys.